In this war that happened in May, India for the first time escalated it to a level where we had cruise missiles flying into Pakistan with direct hits at
Yes.
the time. And from the Indian side, this constant line is said from from the prime minister level up. He says that we called their nuclear bluffs. You said that you were told unofficially that you knew that America knew where the nukes were. Do you think Americans told India that the control of Pakistani nukes also lies with America?
I doubt it. I doubt it because of the vociferousness with which the Pakistanis have come out publicly and said that they control the nukes. But I can tell you definitively
Hmm.
that the State Department was telling both sides, if you're going to fight, fight. Keep it short and keep it non-nuclear. If nuclear weapons are introduced, the whole world is going to change. And so I think there was restraint on both sides. The Pakistanis need to come to a policy conclusion that there's nothing positive for them in
Hmm.
fighting India.
Right.
Nothing, literally nothing good will come of an actual war between India and Pakistan because the Pakistanis will lose.
Hmm.
It's as simple as that. They'll lose. And I'm not talking about nuclear weapons. I'm
Okay.
talking just about a conventional war. The Pakistanis will lose.
Right.
And so there's no benefit to constantly provoking the Indians.
Right. Last question on the nuclear issue. I promise I'll move on after that. Uh, okay, let's nix the control part. You doubt that the actual control, but there was a New York Times article written by the New York Times editor at that time for national security
Yes.
that President Bush had folded in hundreds of millions of dollars in grants to Pakistan to safeguard their nuclear assets. The New York Times knew about this program, but decided to sit on it for a number of months before they finally published it. So even if they don't control it, did they give technology to safeguard it?
Most likely, yes.
And what would that
Yes.
technology
And
be?
that I don't know.
Okay.
It's not my area of expertise, and I couldn't speculate. But I will tell you that the fact that the New York Times sat on the article is a way of confirming its truth.
Hmm.
And what I mean is when one of the big outlets, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, the Los Angeles Times, or one of the big broadcast news networks, when they come across information like this, it's big and it involves classified information, they always ask the White House to confirm or to deny.
Hmm.
If the information is truly classified and it's sensitive, the National Security Advisor will ask for a meeting. Sometimes the meeting is with the president and the head of the newspaper. Usually it's the National Security Advisor. And they'll say, look, yes, it's true, but it's so sensitive that if you publish it, it will put lives in danger. Almost always they'll sit on the article until enough time passes that people aren't in danger anymore. The fact that they sat on the article is confirmation that it was true.
Hmm. So we had this hot war with Pakistan in May, and it happened. And the nuclear question came up again. And I thought, what better person than you to sort of illuminate a little bit more about Pakistan's nuclear weapons and everything. So you were there on the ground in Pakistan in 2002, 2003. We also saw Pakistan sort of lurch into almost like a civil war with the various terrorists it had propped up in its backyard. Was there ever a fear that these nuclear weapons would fall into terrorist hands?
Yes. When I was stationed in Pakistan in 2002, I was told unofficially that the Pentagon controlled the Pakistani nuclear arsenal.
Okay.
That Musharraf had turned control over to the United States because he was afraid of exactly what you just described. But the Pakistanis in the intervening years, and remember, I was there 23 years ago. Over the last 23 years, the Pakistanis have come to say that is absolutely not true. The United States has nothing to do with the Pakistani nuclear arsenal, that Pakistani generals are the ones that control it. So I don't know if that's true, then I would be very worried about who is in charge politically in Pakistan.
Now, you
You know,
mentioned
for example, Imran Khan. I can't believe that I forgot his name.
who's in
Um,
jail? A
who's
popular
in
leader who's in
jail,
jail. Yes, yeah.
right? And still wildly popular.
Wildly, yeah.
He told us when he was still the prime minister, he said, listen, I've got this political situation here domestically. I'm going to start blaming you for everything. And the ambassador laughed and said, we get blamed for everything anyway, so we don't care. So everything that happened, it was the United States' fault. And it was the US, they turned their backs on us. And the US did this and the US did that. And then they arrested him anyway. So he got a message out to the US government saying, can you help me get out of this? And we went to Jemima Goldschmidt, his whatever her name
Ex-wife.
was,
Yeah.
ex-wife. And she went to Pakistan and asked them if they would release him. And they said no. So, like you, I'm worried about continued disagreement in Pakistani politics that has the potential to spill into the streets because the Pakistanis have a tendency to get themselves spun up
Hmm.
and people die during demonstrations and there are attacks against political figures and assassinations and the country is not known for its transformative leaders making positive decisions. I'll tell you another thing. When Benazir Bhutto was in exile in Dubai,
Hmm.
I went to see her with a senior officer. I went as the note taker, and she lived in this $5 million palace on the Gulf, and we were sitting in the front room, the salon of the house, and we heard a car pull up, and she said her exact words. So help me God, if he came home with another Bentley, I'm going to kill him.
Zardari,
Yeah.
her husband.
And I said to my boss afterwards, she makes $60,000 a year. She lives in a $5 million house and he has a collection of Bentleys. Aren't they ashamed of themselves? Like, how can they go back to Pakistan and look the Pakistani people in the face when their people don't even have shoes and enough food to eat? Like, I understand corruption is a problem there, but that level of corruption?
Yeah.
Come on. Well, those are the kinds of politicians that the Pakistani people have to deal with.
What was this Saudi Arabia hold on America? Now you have Saudi terrorists taking out the 9/11 towers.
That's right.
Saudi Arabia actively lobbying to protect one of the most dangerous men, at least in the last quarter century, at least in this region. And then
Yes,
eventually Pervez Musharraf also pardoning AQ Khan, therefore ending all investigations. What is this
that's right.
compulsion that America has with dictators and this love story?
That is one of the most difficult questions that you could ask. You know, we like to try to convince the world that we are a shining beacon of hope for democracy and human rights and equality, and it's just simply not true.
Hmm.
Our foreign relations, our foreign relations are based on our national needs at any given moment. We don't do things because they're the right thing to do.
Hmm.
We do them because they happen to be good for us that day, which is why we get into bed with so many dictators around the world, which is why we get into bed with so many politicians who are so extreme in their personal politics that it makes no sense to the American people. Why are we in bed with Benjamin Netanyahu right now
Right.
when
Right.
we've known Netanyahu since the 1980s as an
Yes.
extremist?
Yes.
Because it's it's the easy thing to do and it serves our purposes, today. That may change tomorrow, but Today, it's okay. You know, I worked for an ambassador in Bahrain who was an absolutely lovely man. And he said one day, I still remember this. I was young and impressionable, and he said, "You know, our foreign policy in Saudi Arabia really is as simple as we buy their oil and they buy our weapons.
That's it.
That's it. That's it. That's the basis." He said, "You spend your career in the Middle East. I've spent my entire adult life in the Middle East." He said, "I don't like the Saudis. They don't like us. But we pretend to have this special relationship." Right? Even in the American embassy, my first overseas tour was in Saudi Arabia. And I
Hmm.
remember an enormous photograph. It had to be 2 meters across. And it was President Franklin Roosevelt and King Abdulaziz ibn Saud, the founder of Saudi Arabia,
Yeah.
in the back of a car together. And this was supposed to be emblematic of our special relationship with the Saudis. But when I first arrived in Saudi Arabia, um, I was placed in embassy housing. So I was living in an apartment in the diplomatic quarter, and I would walk a block or two to the embassy and go in the back entrance of the embassy. And every day, my first 3 days, I would say to this Saudi guard, national Sang, Saudi Arabia National Guard officer standing there, "Salamu alaikum." The
Well,
response, of
well,
course, is "Wa alaikum assalam."
yes.
He would ignore me. So the next day I went in and I said, "Salamu alaikum."
Hmm.
And he ignored me. The third day I went in and I said, "Sabah al khair wa assalamu alaikum." Good morning
I-
and peace be upon you. He ignored me. And I stopped and I said to him, "What's your problem?" And he said to me in English, he said, "You are hired help. We paid for you to come here and defend us. We are not friends."
Hmm.
And I said, "You know what? You're right. We aren't friends. I don't like you, and I don't like any of your compatriots. None of them."
Right.
And then I never spoke to him again. But that was the US Saudi relationship in a nutshell.
Do you think Saudi Arabia knows this now? Because with this mutual defense pact, again, I keep coming back to the nuclear thing and them sort of, basically seeking nuclear deterrence with the help of Pakistan. Then it appears with this Trump regime that a certain amount of American retrenchment has happened in the
Yeah,
region, where it's
yeah.
almost like a hemispheric defense now that America is focusing on. So Saudi Arabia always had the US for its back. Now that US is not, at least it appears that it's not highly dependent on Saudi oil, Saudi energy. Do you think Saudi Arabia is doing this as an insurance pact?
Absolutely, yes. And it's not just Saudi Arabia, it's Kuwait as well. Kuwait last year made a purchase of, not made a purchase, made a sale of oil to China, and for the very first time ever, took payment in yuan.
Yuan. Hmm.
Yeah. First time ever that payment was not in dollars. So I think everybody is coming around to the notion that here in the United States, we're sitting on an ocean of oil. Okay, we have shale oil enough to last us 500 years. We don't need Middle Eastern oil. We buy it because it's good for relations,
Yes.
because we buy it and then they buy our weapon systems.
Right.
So we continue to do that. But when push comes to shove, we don't need the Saudis anymore.
And
We
that's what.
don't. And so they're hedging their bets. They're
Yeah.
they're improving their relations with China. They're
Mm.
improving their relations with India, which is a huge market and in need of oil.
Yes.
And if the Indians are going to have problems, especially from the United States, buying Russian oil or Russian natural gas, they should just buy it from Saudi Arabia. It makes it even easier.
Right. Yeah,
So I
absolutely.
think we're
Yeah.
seeing a transformation here
D-
in the way the
a
world
very
operates.
dynamic geopolitical shift is being viewed here. That's why conversations like
Agreed.
with you, someone in the field and who has historical context, I mean, it's fantastic. During your time in Pakistan, 2002, 3, 4, around that time,
Mhm.
another very dangerous threat to humanity was Dr. A.Q. Khan's
Oh,
network.
yes.
right?
Yes, yes,
So we got to know that nuclear material was being smuggled out to the North Koreans. Uh,
yes.
there was proliferation going on with Libyan nuclear material as well going into Pakistan. All of that started coming out. When you were there in Pakistan,
Yes,
when you got this on your desk, what was the first thing you thought? You guys are going after terrorists. Here's Pakistan assembling nuclear bombs and selling it in the gray market or black market.
that's an outstanding question and a very important one. It never crossed my desk. I was specifically counterterrorism, but a colleague of mine, this was his entire life, was dealing with AQ Khan. Well, if we had taken, the Israeli approach, we would have just killed him. He was easy enough to find. We knew where he lived. We knew how he spent his day. But he also had the support of the Saudi government. And the Saudis came to us and said, please leave him alone. Please. We like AQ Khan. We're working with AQ Khan. We're close to the Pakistanis. They even named Faisalabad after King Faisal. Just leave him alone. This was a mistake that the US government made, not confronting AQ Khan head on. And I'll add too, later on, when I went to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee staff as the chief investigator, I worked for a man who was a journalist before going to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee staff. And he and his wife wrote a book that was first titled The Man from Pakistan. And the title was changed in the paperback version to The Nuclear Jihadist. It was the most detailed book ever written about AQ Khan.
Mm,
And they asked more than 24 CIA officers and United Nations IAEA officials exactly the same question that you just asked me.
mm,
I was surprised that they got so many people to speak with them freely and openly. But they all told the same thing. They said that there were instructions from the White House not to attack AQ Khan. And it had to be because the Saudis were demanding it, insisting on it. We often wondered, and I have no proof, this is just my own speculation. We often wondered if it was because the Saudis were also building a nuclear capability.
mm.
Yeah, I think that's something we should probably be thinking about.
Well, when you put this into context and you talk about the Saudi-Pakistan Mutual Defense Pact that was just signed a few months ago,
Yes,
is Saudi Arabia basically calling in its investment?
I think yes. But I have to laugh about this mutual defense pact.
Mm,
I don't know if you've ever spent any time in Saudi Arabia,
No,
but
I haven't.
almost the entire Saudi military is Pakistanis. No Saudi's going to join the military unless they're going to make him a general. You
Uh,
know, there are a lot of Bedouins in the Saudi military, but you go straight in as an officer. If you're a Saudi citizen, you're going to start as an officer. There are no privates or corporals who are Saudi. They're all Pakistani. All of them. It's the Pakistanis that protect Saudi Arabia
but how realistic is a
on
nuclear
on the
umbrella,
ground.
though? But how realistic is a nuclear umbrella, though? That's what is, I mean, at least some of the doomsayers in India think of it like that.
Yeah, I don't think it is realistic.
Yeah.
No, I
So
don't think it's realistic.